إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن نبينا وحبيبنا وقائدنا وقدوتنا وقرة عيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. نشهد بأنه قد بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجعلها على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار، أعاذنا الله وإياكم منه. أما بعد، يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد, all praises and thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We bear witness and attest that there is no deity or divinity truly worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And we bear witness and attest that our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam is indeed the last of messengers and prophets chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sent to all of mankind, sent with the message of peace and justice, the message of mercy, the message of compassion, the message of human brotherhood, and indeed the message of Tawheed, of monotheism. That is the message of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send His peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and upon his family, and upon the companions, and upon all the followers. And may Allah guide us to be among these followers, among the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala wa sallam, to live by his teachings and only die as Muslims. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Always a pleasure seeing you. It has been a while visiting the Cypress community, very dear to my heart. I'm glad to see so many of you. MashaAllah, may Allah continue to bless this community and those who serve it. The one thing I've noticed as I visit different communities, different masajid, is a level of disappointment that exists in the whole concept of leadership, especially in light of what we're witnessing today. The genocide that is happening in Gaza, in Palestine, the mass murder that is happening in Lebanon, the failure of politicians in our country or politicians in the so-called Muslim majority countries. And some is political failures and some is religious failures. Some so-called scholars also rubber stamping oppressors, tyrants, or remaining quiet and silent in the face of what we're witnessing. Genocide in Palestine, semi-genocide in Sudan, and so on and so forth. And this has led Muslims to think, khalas, there's nothing called leadership. I'm on my own. And as Muslims, we can't reach that point. Alhamdulillah, our ummah, our history has been blessed with a long list of examples of leaders who are not traitors. Leaders who care for their ummah. Leaders who are willing to speak up the truth no matter what. Leaders who are not afraid to stand up against injustice. The most best example of such leaders is our role model Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who taught us to stand up even if the status quo is against you standing up, even if there will be repression and a price for speaking truth. But also his companions, and honestly all the way throughout our history, there is no shortage of lists of people who continue to stand up until today. So let's not despair. But with the interest, and for the interest of time, I wanted to pick on one example that we can learn from his lifetime. And that person is a Sahaba, one of the greatest companions of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And that example that I chose among many is Sayyiduna Bilal al-Habashi or Bilal ibn Rabah radiyallahu anhu wa arda. The example of Sayyidina Bilal. Because subhanAllah, I felt in his story there's so much for us to learn from and be inspired by. From the time he was born to the time he accepted Islam and how he was treated until his last day. May Allah be pleased with him. That maybe in these 10 minutes that we have, we learn inshallah something. The story says Sayyidina Bilal was born as a slave in a society, pre-Islamic society, that subhanAllah allowed people to be born into slavery. From parents who were also taken as slaves. He was born in Mecca, and they say the owner of those slaves decided to remove all the slaves who were born in Mecca and send them outside of Mecca when he heard about the message of Muhammad, because he was afraid that his mind would be quote unquote poisoned by the message of Islam and dignity and human rights and equality. But he left one in Mecca because he needed someone to take care of his sheep. You know, he had a lot of herds of sheep, so he said, I'm going to take all the rest outside. Bilal will be outside of the outskirts of Mecca. He won't hear about the message of Muhammad. But Allah is the best of planners. On one of those days when he was out, herding the sheep, taking care of the sheep on the outskirts of Mecca, it just happened that in that area, in one of the caves, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his beloved companion, Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, were meditating. He used to go to one of these caves and sometimes spend a day, sometimes 3-4 days, making dhikr and meditating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they saw Bilal with the sheep there. They called him, hey shepherd, ya ra'a al-ghanam, would you happen to have some milk? We see you have a lot of sheep with you. Would you be willing to sell us or give us some of the milk from one of them? Bilal looked at them and he said, you see all of them, they're all for meat, they're not for milk. So there's only one of them that is carrying milk, and barely enough to cover for me to drink something and eat something during the day. You know, the milk kept them going for the day with little dates. So he said, barely there is for me, you know, I'm going to spend the whole day, but you know what, you look like you need it more than I do. I'll give you my share. SubhanAllah. Look at his generosity before Islam. The Prophet ﷺ said, bring me that sheep, and bring me a container, the container you drink with. And he milked that sheep until that container was full. It usually never reached that level. And the Prophet ﷺ drank until he was full. That's it. And he milked that sheep again until it was full and gave it to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr drank from it until he was full. May Allah be pleased with him. And then he milked that sheep again and it was full, the cup, and gave it to Bilal. And Bilal drank until he was full. At that moment, Bilal figured there's something unusual here. What's going on? Who are you? What is your story? So the Prophet said, are you ready to listen about Islam? Learn about Islam? Yeah, basically, I'm paraphrasing. I'm sure he told him, well, we have a long day, nothing else to do. Go ahead. The Prophet gave him the teachings of Islam. And taught him about the wahi, the revelation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the oneness. You know, until the end of the day, it's getting dark, he had to go back. He went back and told his wife. Sayyidina Bilal told his wife what he heard. She said, Wallahi, what you're hearing is the truth. Get us more information. SubhanAllah, when you have a good spouse, right? Go get us more next day. So they say for 3 days in books of Seerah, for 3 days, Bilal was learning from the Prophet. By the third day, he said, I believe it. I want to be Muslim. What do I do to become Muslim? The Prophet taught him how to become Muslim. He became Muslim and he told him, I warn you, be careful, don't announce it, don't declare your Islam, because you will be persecuted by Quraysh. I cannot even protect you. I cannot even protect ourselves. SubhanAllah. But apparently, Sayyidina Bilal, whatever he did, exposed himself. Maybe another person reported him something. His owner, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, one of the worst tyrants of Arabia at that time, heard about that and said, I can't allow our slaves to challenge us. If we allow that, then all the slaves will challenge us. We'll look like wimps in front of the rest of Arabia. So they decided to make a lesson out of it. And they decided to torture him. They said, well, unless you return back to worshipping all the idols, we're going to torture you to death. SubhanAllah. They say that a rope was placed around his neck. As Umayyah rode on a horse, dragging him behind him, asking everybody in Mecca to stone him, whip him, throw rocks at him, say, curse him. And he wouldn't, subhanAllah, held steadfast. Brought him back to the same place, put him on the floor, on the desert, on the hot sand of the desert. Tied him up, pulling his arms and legs each in one different direction. Whipping him, beating him, putting rocks, hot rocks on top of him. You can imagine how hot the desert is in Mecca. And said, all we need you to say is mention Allah wal-Izzah, one of the two of the idols of the Arabs at that time. And subhanAllah, Sayyidina Bilal said a sentence that became historic as a challenge and a defiance. Ahadun ahad. Right? The famous saying, Ahadun ahad. One. Allah is one. Allah is one. I will not give up. SubhanAllah. Now, Bilal could have compromised, by the way, Islamically speaking. When your life is under threat, Islam gives you a permission to do what is safer for your own personal life. Sayyidina Bilal understood that this was not a moment about him anymore. This was a moment about the Ummah, about the message itself. Like what he does today is going to be seen how strong are the followers of Muhammad. Remember, at that time, there were only 7 people who have declared Islam publicly at that time. Only 7. Sayyidina Muhammad, our Prophet, Abu Bakr, Sumayyah, Ammar, Suhaib, these are, and Bilal, like these are a handful. There were a few others who were still secret Muslims, but there were only 7 declared Muslims in the Ummah. That's the Ummah. We're 2 billion now. That was 7 declared Muslims, subhanAllah. He knew that if he revokes or he retracts, it will look like, oh, Muslims come and go. You know, this is like a fad. So he understood he has to withstand that pain for the sake of something greater than him. And wallahi, we all have faced things like that in our life. So many times we face things where we have a moment of truth for us. We see something that is wrong. How do we speak up to it? Do we choose the path of least resistance, the comfort zone? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, hold steadfast, persevere in steadfastness for truth, for justice. Witnesses for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the moment when you have to stand for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what Bilal understood. How many of us witness so much injustice today? What is happening, wallahi, in Gaza, in Palestine? Mass murder, genocide. Things we haven't seen, none of us has seen in our lifetime. When you talk about entire neighborhoods, entire families wiped out. Families living in one building completely wiped out. When you see children in pieces, parents holding the head of his child, a mother holding the leg or what is left of a leg of a child. A child crying over the dead body of their... What we're witnessing today is something you wouldn't imagine the world would witness and remain silent. Just today, 6 buildings at once, tall buildings in Beirut, destroyed now. They say 8 missiles, 2-ton bombs each. SubhanAllah. There were more missiles, more explosives thrown and dropped on Gaza than atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. SubhanAllah. In just this year alone. 45,000 people killed. 16,000 children. And yet there are still people who are choosing to be silent, to be quiet. None of my business. This is, subhanAllah. What we learn is Sayyidina Bilal understood. The Prophet ﷺ heard about what is happening to his beloved brother, Bilal. And he said, I wish I had something to free him. The Sahaba understood the message. And Abu Bakr, as always, leading, pioneer, said, let me try and see. and he went to where Bilal was being tortured. They say he was covered in sand and rocks. You can barely see his face. He could barely breathe. He's almost dead. And he told the two people who were torturing him, Abu Jahl and Umayyah, he said, aren't you done? Didn't you have enough torture? There's nothing left of him. What are you waiting for? And I could only imagine personally that maybe they thought, why have Bilal die among us and become a hero among the slaves and the marginal? Let's release him. Let his people have him and he will die with them. We're over. So he said, yeah, we'll sell him to you. Umayyah said, I will sell him his freedom. You buy him. Abu Bakr said, how much? Umayyah said, we'll sell him to you for 5 uqiyas of gold. Uqiyah is like 200 grams. 5 uqiyas, like 1 kilo. Now at that time you could probably buy a slave for a few grams of silver, not gold. But they decided to give him some ridiculous price just to kind of humiliate him in negotiating with them, right? They wanted him to say, well, I only have 1 uqiyah of silver, 1 coin, I'll give you 1 coin, is that okay? They wanted to humiliate the Muslims. SubhanAllah, Abu Bakr did not hesitate a split of a second. He got his bag and said, here's the money, you take it. 5 uqiyah, 1 kilogram of gold. I don't deal with gold, but I have to research. You know how much 1 kilogram of gold is today? $85,000. SubhanAllah, $85,000. They say the seerah books say that Umayyah and Abu Jahl looked at Abu Bakr and had a smirk on their face. And said, had you insisted, by the way, we would have gladly given him up to you for 1 uqiyah. 1 uqiyah of gold, 200 grams, would have been more than happy. He looked back at them and smiled and said, I would have been more than happy to pay 100 uqiyas had you insisted. Subhanallah. You thought you got a good deal? I'm the one who got a good deal. You know what 100 uqiyas equivalent to 20 kilograms? $1.6 million. That probably would have been more than what he could pay. He would probably have had to take a loan to pay that. But Abu Bakr was willing to do that, subhanAllah. Wallah, I think with me, my dear brothers and sisters. What brings relationship to Abu Bakr and Bilal? They're not from the same tribe, not the same skin color, not the same origin, not the same ethnicity. SubhanAllah, nothing brings them together except one thing, which is higher than all of those things. Islam. Iman, their faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's what brings it. That one is more important than all the other ones. Because yes, otherwise we know that Abu Lahab, who is from the same lineage of the Prophet, same tribe of the Prophet, and we know he's in hellfire. His lineage didn't help him in any way. What helps you is your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your heart, your taqwa. Abu Bakr had the love for his brother more than anything else, subhanAllah. Wallahi, I ask myself before I ask you, how much are we willing to do to support our brothers and sisters who are being tortured and abused like Sayyidina Bilal? Wallahi, today our brothers and sisters in Palestine are the Bilals of our time today. Where are the Abu Bakrs of our ummah today? We are witnessing them being tortured for being Muslim, for standing for Al-Aqsa, for refusing to be humiliated, for refusing to have the shame that much of the Arab leaders and governments and sometimes some of their followers have. SubhanAllah. The people of Palestine, the people of Gaza are teaching us that no, ahadun, ahad, ahadun, ahad, every day. And every day they're being tortured. Not a lot of Abu Bakrs in the Ummah today. Where are the Abu Bakrs who would come and say, I'm willing to stand for you? Wallahi, some of us are hesitating not just about money. Wallahi, dua, we gave up. It's almost like it's normal. We watched the genocide. Protest and voting, protesting, communicating with elected officials. It's almost like we lost hope in doing anything. Subhanallah. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised those who stand by Him to give them victory. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ Subulana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those who strive on my path, I will guide them to my ways. In tansurullaha yansurkum. You stand by Allah, Allah will stand by you and grant you victory. Subhanallah, look what happened. Bilal was free. and from being one of the most marginalized of people, as a slave, as an oppressed person, he became one of the most important people in history of the world, subhanAllah. And certainly for us Muslims, he's on the top. You ask any Muslim today, young and old, list the 10 Sahabas that you remember their names, Bilal will always be among them, subhanAllah, of his history. Allah made him what? The Mu'adhin of Rasulullah. The first Mu'adhin in Islam and the Mu'adhin of Rasulullah. Gave him the honor of making adhan on the Kaaba, not in Mecca. On top of the Kaaba in Mecca, subhanAllah. Who gets that honor? Abu Bakr, when he freed his brother, Sayyidina Umar says, Sayyiduna a'taqa Sayyidana. Our teacher, our noble teacher and leader freed our noble and honorable teacher and leader, subhanAllah. That's how Islam elevates. Wallahi, Islam elevates the honorable and puts down the dishonorable people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him. You know, when we say Bilal, now say Sayyiduna Bilal, our teacher, our leader. How Allah elevates. May Allah reunite us with him and our beloved Prophet Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Muhammad gave him the glad tidings. Prophet Muhammad told him, Ya Bilal, what do you do? What's your secret? Allah made me hear your footsteps in Jannah. This is, can you imagine that glad tidings from the Prophet? He said, Ya Bilal, what's your secret? Allah is making me hear your footsteps in Jannah, subhanAllah. They say when the Prophet ﷺ died, Abu Bakr became the leader of the Ummah. Bilal could not stay in Medina anymore because everywhere he walked, it reminded him of his beloved Muhammad. Every street he would take, he would remember him. They said he could not even make the adhan because every time he would say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, when he gets to Ashhadu anna Muhammad, and he stops and he starts choking up and crying. Subhanallah. Think of the love that exists. So every time he will make the adhan, he says Ashhadu anna Muhammad, and he stops and he is crying, and they will try to help him and he can't. So at the end he said, I need permission to leave, I can't be in Medina. So he asked permission to travel to Damascus. He said, I will go to Sham. I'll participate in the Rabat, standing and protecting the borders. And Abu Bakr reluctantly said, you can go. We need you around. You are from the leftovers of that special group, but we'll let you go. And he lived there, subhanAllah, with his wife until he died in Damascus. And for those who have ever visited Damascus, he's buried in the Bab al-Saghir, famous cemetery in Damascus, on the outskirts of Damascus. May Allah be pleased with him. Sayyidina Bilal gave us so many lessons of pride, of honor, of courage, of fighting how Islam, subhanAllah, fights and eliminates this ugly racism that exists in our society. How based on your color you become something. Islam said this is not acceptable. Although we see that ugliness creeping in the world and even some Muslim communities today. Even these social economic divisions. You know who was the wife of Sayyidina Bilal? He was married to two wives. One of them, her name is Hala bint Auf, the sister of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf. Who is Abdul Rahman ibn Auf? The richest man in Arabia, a companion of the Prophet, the billionaire of the time. Imagine his sister marrying Sayyidina Bilal, who was only earlier on the margin society. That is what Islam teaches us, my dear brothers and sisters. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put that in our heart, that we go back to the teachings and realize our ummah has great leaders that can inspire us to be leaders in our own community, in our own life, in our ummah. Because the ummah is in need of the spirit of Bilal and Abu Bakrs of this time. We need them, and be that person. Don't look for superheroes and mythological examples. You have them in your history. We have them in our examples of role models, our guiding stars, the Sahaba of our beloved Prophet ﷺ. May Allah make us that ummah that earn that honor. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, as we conclude, just a reminder. What is happening in the world continues to happen. It hasn't stopped. The intensity has not stopped. It's just we became desensitized. I call upon you to continue to be engaged. Use your social media, your access, your WhatsApp, your email to educate yourself and others about what is happening. Make sure you contact your elected officials. When CARE says register to vote, please register to vote. They are elected officials at your local level, congressional level, who are daring to speak up against the genocide. But they don't find us to support them until they get chewed up by AIPAC and others. Where are we? Where are we when the students, mashallah, brave students at every college stood to challenge that genocide and the people who support it? Remember, this is an American genocide. Every penny, every missile that is killing our brothers and sisters is something that you and I are supporting. So this is not just about supporting our brothers and sisters as Muslims, but this is also about making sure when we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we tell Allah we tried our best, as our money is being used, continues to be used to murder people. We call upon you to be active with organizations such as CARE and others. Alhamdulillah, CARE has been day in, day out, wallahi, non-stop, challenging elected officials, engaging with media, challenging the Islamophobes and designers, supporting the students, supporting the organizers. But we cannot do it alone. We need your support as a community, with you and with CARE, to continue to do that. And we need each one of you to help the work of CARE. Our goal is to visit all the masajid and ask everyone to become a member of CARE. Whatever you can give every month, this is how we become a member. $10 a month, $20, $50, $100, whatever you can, goes in. One, you support CARE hiring staff to support and the lawyers to file lawsuits on our behalf. But also when I meet with elected officials, I can tell them I represent 1,000 members. Then they pay attention. Then they know it's a fact. So on your way out, inshallah, learn how you can become activated with CARE and how you can become a member, inshallah. عباد الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت على سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين ويا ناصر المظلومين انصر إخواننا وارحمهم في كل مكان ونخص بالذكر أهلنا في فلسطين وفي غزة وفي سوريا وفي لبنان وفي كشمير وأفغانستان وباكستان والهند وبورما اللهم كن مع أخواننا في بنغلاديش وتركستان الشرقية والسودان والصومال وفي كل مكان يا أكرم الأكرمين اللهم فرج همهم ونفس كربهم ووحد صفوفهم وألف بين قلوبهم وانصرهم على من عاداك وعاداهم اللهم شاف مرضاهم وتقبل شهداءهم اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم وأذل الشرك والمشركين اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم ومن نصر أهلنا في غزة واجعلنا منهم واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم ومن خذل أهلنا في غزة وفي سائر فلسطين ولا تجعلنا منهم اللهم نصرك الذي وعدت اللهم نصرك الذي وعدت اللهم إن لم يكن بك غضب علينا فلا نبالي اللهم إن لم يكن بك غضب علينا فلا نبالي اللهم نسألك نصرك الذي وعدت اللهم اشف صدور المؤمنين اللهم اشف صدور المؤمنين بنصر مؤزر لأهلنا في فلسطين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة